Tonight, This Is Your Life hopes to chart the story of a homegrown talent who's had them rocking all over the world. A founder member of one of this country's greatest groups, he's been #1 here and in America.
For some reason, he's sold millions of records. Jammy swank.
He's the son of a wartime Navy hero, and he once faced turbulent waters himself, armed with a bucket and a mop. Well, everyone's got to start somewhere. He's certainly cleaned up since then. Now he's A-list and a regular on the polo fields of Britain.
That's a tough sport, and he's had plenty of hard knocks.
Today he's been invited to our Thameside studios for a chat about his music. He's decided to drive himself, so we're keeping tabs on him. He loves cars. Another of his passions is Formula One racing and the Grand Prix circuit, so we've drummed up this little number and this little number, known as Phil Collins.
Sir.
Phil, now you've flown in from Geneva, thanks for that, but you've known our man since beginning of time.
Oh, since Genesis, Michael.
Good enough. Okay, get ready, and I'll do the same. Another pit stop.
Bloody hell.
I said I was coming over late.
I didn't know you were...
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike, and these are the mechanics, and we've all got here so that we could say, Mike Rutherford, today, this is your life.
Yeah! I always see the guys doing this, and I always think how they react, and I'm exactly the same as them. Gobsmacked, to be honest. Wow.
We've got a group waiting for you through there, of course, so I'll follow you and you lot follow me. Is that all right?
Right, okay.
Thank you, Mike. Among the surprises lined up for Mike Rutherford, more from Phil Collins and Chris Tarrant. A world champion drives in, and horsepower with a family connection. Did you feel like leaping into that Formula One and roaring off?
Have you seen how I drive?
Well, we have actually, yes, so you had us worried. On set, as you may have noticed, family and friends from the tracks of your years as singer, guitarist and songwriter. And the woman who has backed you for 26 of those years, your wife, Angie. Angie, I always like to know, was it easy to keep the secret?
It was so difficult and very stressful. In fact, I think I was quite mute for the last 2 weeks, and so I didn't say anything. And then I think I've been going to bed earlier and earlier, haven't I? Do you know, just last night was 8 o'clock to avoid it.
I thought this was the start of old age, you know.
Lovely. Well, 26 years together, you should be able to survive this. To the facts, over more than 35 years, the Genesis songbook and the works of Mike and the Mechanics have sold more than 100 million albums, and you've clocked up #1s around the globe. Here's the man at work.
Looking back over my shoulder, I can see that look in your eye, turning my heart over and over. I never wanted to say goodbye.
In step with you there, Phil Collins and Tony Banks. And with the more Genesis key players, Steve Hackett, Ray Wilson, Les Adey. Bill Bruford, John Silver and Ant Phillips. Phil, you and Mike are like family, aren't you?
Yes, and we almost probably are, really. My youngest daughter, Lily, and their youngest, Harry, got married while we were at a gig in Portugal. We came back from the gig and found that they were only this high, but they actually had got married.
Well, let's go back even before Genesis now and get chapter and verse on Mike Rutherford. Or to give you your full designation, Michael John Clutie Crawford Rutherford. You arrive on the scene on October the 2nd, 1950, in Guildford, Surrey, the second child for the late Crawford and Annette Rutherford. Your father was a naval officer working at the Admiralty at the time, and you had a small boat of your own, complete with Sister Nicky as your crew. Your father was appointed captain of the cruiser HMS Newcastle and sent on active duty to the Korean War. You were just 2 years old when he went away, and he was in the Far East for 3 years. By the time he got back, he must have been just a dim memory for you, I suppose.
I remember him coming back, and I remember sleeping at the end of his bed for the first night he was back and kept saying to my mother, "But will he be here tomorrow?" sort of thing.
But you realised who it was?
Oh, yeah. Well, she told me it was my dad, so...
Yes. I believe that. Well, that's fair enough, isn't it? What more could you say?
Trusting as I am.
Yes. Your father had already been awarded the Distinguished Service Order for his exploits in the Second World War. He ended his Navy days at the Portsmouth Gunnery School, and the family went too. Nicky, your young brother enjoyed life with the senior service.
Yes, he did. I mean, they were very good to us, and every Friday, Dad used to have to take the salute at the parade, and when he was 4, Mike was dressed in his full naval outfit and saluted the Lord Mayor of Portsmouth.
Well, all that gets you your first press cutting. Michael 4 nearly stole the show. Now, you were always at ease in the saddle, and these days you're a dedicated follower of polo. And it's in the bloodline, as we found out when we teamed up with the next generation of Rutherford riders.
Hi, Dad. Know where I am? That's right, I'm here at Cowdrey Park, where we've had lots of fun playing polo together over the last few years, despite all of the accidents you've had. I think it was your first polo game ever that you ended up being carted off to hospital with 2 broken legs, a broken arm, broken nose, and a lot of missing teeth. Even this year, having spent hours in the dentist chair getting your teeth fixed from that first accident, you managed to knock them all out again yourself. How you did that, I don't know. All the same, Dad, you don't look too bad, considering.
Hi, Dad. I might only be a beginner. The trouble is, I don't have any of my own horses yet. I really like this one, King Q here, though. I'm sure you wouldn't miss him. You've got plenty of your own. Anyway, congratulations on tonight.
Hi, Dad. Just to say from all of us how proud we are of you. Have a great night tonight. You really deserve it.
Have a great night, Dad.
The charge of the Rutherfords, your children Kate, Tom and Harry. But, of course, you are not the only famous face who dashes from polo field to concert stage.
But thanks to me, you nearly missed a gig at Madison Square Garden.
From The Who, drummer Kenny Jones. So, Kenny, what did you do?
Well, I called Mike up and I said, I've just taken up the sport of polo. Do you fancy having a bash here? And he said, yeah, I'll have a go at that, much to my amazement. And so we both went off to learn to play polo. And about, I don't know, must have been a year later, Mike had his first accident where he knocked all his teeth out, and I thought he was never going to talk to me ever again. And that was it. But they managed to rebuild him, ship him off to New York, and he did the gig.
I remember I was actually recording a Mechanics album at the time, and I told my producer I was going to the dentist, not to play a game of polo. I came back the next day and he said, what kind of dentist have you got?
A vicious one, obviously.
Yeah.
Kenny, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, in 1964, when you're 13, you stock your tuck box for the move to Charterhouse Public School in Surrey. There, like many before you, you join your first band. It's called Anon. And among the lineup is Ant Phillips. Charterhouse is packed with musical wannabes. Competing for attention at the same time is an outfit called The Garden Wall, formed by Tony Banks and Peter Gabriel. So, Tony, you were busy mastering keyboards back then.
Well, yes, in those days it was just a piano, I'm afraid, which was for some reason or other in the school dining room. And there used to be a kind of race to get there to see who could play it first, normally between me and Peter Gabriel. And if I got there first, then I could accompany Pete. Or if someone else got there, there was a guy who played clarinet, I'd accompany him as well. Because, like Mike, I've always been much happier accompanying somebody else.
Well, your confidence grows and you start to write your own numbers. In the Easter break of 1967, survivors of Anon and The Garden Wall joined forces. You record your entire repertoire, 5 songs in all. You emerge with a new name and a dazzling future as Genesis. The frontman then was Peter Gabriel. He went on to make solo hits like Salisbury Hill, Biko and Sledgehammer, but he down tools today at his recording studios in Wiltshire to put this on the record.
I remember at school when we were first trying to make noises together, and you were actually in a rival band, but we started writing and combining resources, and our housemaster pulled us aside, both Tony Banks and I, and said, this character, Rutherford, disreputable. I don't want you mixing with him. We ignored his advice, and I'm very glad we did. There was one night, I think we'd been up north somewhere, and we're all exhausted, as we often were, as we couldn't afford the hotels, used to come back to London, and you were at the wheel, and we had an unusual way of going round a roundabout. In fact, we didn't actually go round the roundabout, we went right over the top because you'd fallen asleep. Ever since then, I think, I've been a little nervous about driving with you, but I very much enjoy listening to you, and have a great night tonight. I'll see you very soon.
Genesis demo tracks are good enough to catch the attention of impresario Jonathan King, who signs you to his record label. Your first single, The Silent Sun, is welcomed by the Melody Maker and championed on radio by the great Kenny Everett. Being in a promising band is still an expensive business, and while studying for your A-levels at Farnborough Technical College, you take a part-time job. What was that?
Cleaning the floors at Sainsbury's at 6 in the morning.
Fair enough. Well, the only way was up, of course. Genesis plug away, playing colleges and clubs, and another school friend helps you out in more ways than one. John Alexander, that was you.
Yes, well, apart from perhaps Ant's parents, my parents were the only other people who believed in the band and would be prepared to buy us any equipment. And I haven't seen most of it since. In fact, 35 years later, I'm still waiting for a guitar back. But in the early 70s, I'd been going out with Angie, and I had asked Mike, when I left London, to keep an eye on her. And in true Rutherford style, the next thing that happened is I got a letter asking my permission to take her out. And the rest is history.
That shows a decent nature, doesn't it? But Angie, let's hear your side. You were 17 then, and a model with Vogue and Elle magazine covers to your credit. What is your version of the Mike and Angie story?
Well, in fact, now I was 17 and I was going to Lucy Clayton's college in London. And part of the course was to teach you how to get in and out of sports cars correctly. And they had high expectations, I think. Anyway, this didn't really apply to me because Mike used to come and pick me up every day in the band's bright orange transit van and park it bang outside the college just so that the principal could see me clambering in the front seat, and off he'd whisk me to a Genesis gig.
And you marry in Knightsbridge on November the 13th, 1976. Life on the road, bouncing along in a crowded, beaten-up old van, led, naturally, to an interest in Formula One racing.
But to me, you've always been on the right track.
Former world champion Damon Hill. David, you're a bit of a rocker, really, aren't you?
Well, I fancy myself as a bit of a guitarist. You've got one or two musicians who think that they're good racing drivers. Mike doesn't fall into that category, but he very kindly put me on the spot by asking me to play at Cowdrey Park for a charity concert, which I enjoyed thoroughly, and it was a dream come true for me, so thanks for that.
And he was the man of the moment. It was a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Back back to Genesis. In 1970, the group found it had a vacancy for a drummer. Another legend is about to be born. Phil Collins, tell us about your audition.
Oh, it was at Peter Gabriel's parents' house. And I came down with a friend of mine, and I arrived early. First thing they said was, oh, go and have a swim while you're waiting. And I said, well, there's local pool. And they said, no, in the garden. You know, it was sort of a different kind of setup from the one that I'd been used to. Anyway, I remember Mike particularly because the piano was out on the terrace, you know, and I set my drums up underneath the umbrella. But Mike had these sort of carpet slippers and sort of smoking jacket. And he looked very sort of hair back, and it all looked very, very sort of smooth and cool.
Very Noel Coward.
Yeah, very Noel Coward, yes, it was.
Yes.
I'm not sure I do. These sort of legends, these sort of stories, they kind of develop, you know what I mean? It's probably
he's a troublemaker. See, look,
scruffy old school dressing. Anyway,
we shall have you thrown out the moment this show is over. In 1974 comes the group's most commercial track to date. I Know What I Like reaches number 19 in the UK charts. The next year, Peter Gabriel announces his departure from the group. Phil Collins emerges from behind his drum kit to take over lead vocals. And over the next 15 years, hit follows hit.
Follow you, follow me, turn it on, turn it on, turn it on again. Turn it on, turn it on, turn it on. This is the world we live in, and these are the hands we give up. I could say day, and you say night. Tell me it's blind when I know that it's right. It's always the same, it's just a shame. That's all, that's all.
Someone who's played all your hits on radio was presenting his breakfast show from Rome this very morning, but he touched down at Gatwick just 2 hours ago so that he could provide a personal memory.
The first time I saw you, you were wearing green tights.
I do believe it's Chris Tarrant. This sounds like a very personal memory.
It was very strange. They came on Tiswas to promote one of the singles, and Phil and Mike were standing there with long hair and beards in these giant flower pots with these sort of cardboard sunflowers around there. It didn't look silly. Cardboard sunflowers around there. And these, well, they were frankly obscene green tights. And I remember it's a very tenuous plot that basically needed fertilising, which was custard pie. It's very very subtle stuff, and watering, which meant lots of buckets of water. And we completely soaked you. And you went, thanks, mate. All this stuff. He has forgiven me, and since then, I do see him a lot socially. He is a gentleman rock and roller, as everybody said. He's the most extraordinarily kind guy. But I do find that whenever I'm around his house for dinner, it does turn into, as everybody here knows, it does turn into an all-night drink-a-thon. And I find about 5 a.m, I think, I'm supposed to be in London on the radio in about an hour, and I go racing away, go straight on the radio, and he always goes, try and play a bit of Genesis before you finish. And I always tell him I have, and I never do. Because he really needs the royalties. You're a good man.
I heard him play the same song twice one day.
Yes, that's happened as well, but neither of them were yours. Bless you.
In 1985, after 2 solo albums, you form a new outfit, Mike and the Mechanics. A major collaborator is B.A. Robertson. Soon you're looking for lead singers. You recruit Paul Carrack. One of your biggest hits comes in 1989. The Living Years reaches number 2 in the UK and number 1 in America. B.A. Robertson, there is a story behind that hit.
There is, yeah. I was with Mike at his house in Guildford when my father died, and I took the call sitting on the end of the bed of Mike and Angie's in their room. And 12 weeks later, this boy was born. And sadly, a few months after that, Mike called me from America. He was on tour with Genesis to say that his father had also passed away. And a few weeks after that, Harry was born. And I'm Harry's godfather, and Mike is Rory's godfather. And I think what this song does for men of our generation is it encourages us to put our arms around our children the boys especially, and tell them that we love them and that we're proud of them, because I think that's something that Mike and I feel, for all their qualities, maybe our fathers weren't able to do for us.
I wasn't there that morning when my father passed away. I didn't get to tell him all the things I had to say. I think I caught his spirit later that same year. I'm sure I heard his echo in my baby's newborn tears. I just wish I could have told him in the living years. So say it loud. Say it clear. Come on, say it clear. You can listen as well as you hear. It's too late. It's too late when we die. It's too late when we die. We don't see eye to
In 1995, you're on tour with Mike and the Mechanics in South Africa. Another team of Brits was flying the flag out there at the time, the England rugby team. The players are given tickets to the concert and invited to a backstage party.
But I had to pass up the chance.
His former England rugby captain, Will Carling.
Very good.
So, Will, you were saying?
Well, yeah, I don't want to make Mike feel too bad, too old.
go
but-
on, you're good.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
good.
no, too old. But the first record I ever bought was Follow You, Follow Me, and when I was very young. And but I loved it. I was a huge Genesis fan. I was a huge Mike and the Mechanics fan. So when we were out playing the 95 World Cup, it was great being invited to this concert and the after-show party. But they're too shy. You can't turn up to a sort of a rock star's party. So I passed on it. But I actually got to know Mike on the pitches where Harry and Tom, my stepson, were playing sport. So it was great for me because I actually got to meet and got to know one of my heroes. It was a pleasure.
Well done. Well, after nearly 4 decades in the business, music is still your first love. We've already reunited an assortment of Genesis from down the years, but now after Steve Hackett's departure in 1978, you went looking for another guitarist to boost your sound during concert tours. You flew one contender from his home in Milwaukee to audition for you in New York, and after a few chords, you knew you'd found your man. Since then, for more than 20 years around the world, he's played by your side.
And I've hit the road for you again tonight.
From Milwaukee, Darryl Sturmer. So, Darryl, you've done a few miles together.
Yes, we have. Actually, I think there was such a great chemistry between Mike and I. I became kind of Mike's interpreter whenever we were in the United States, because a lot of Americans have a hard time understanding Mike. I don't anymore, but I did in the beginning. And a lot of times, if Mike would ask for a straw, they would be going, like, what is he saying? Because he would say straw or something. And there was actually a story behind that one, but one time you were asking for... But it had nothing to do with drugs.
No.
So, but anyway, so... no, Mike... So Mike was asking for some straws backstage, and this American kid said, well, okay, I'll go get... How many would you like? He said, how about a box full? And he said, okay, and he left. And all of a sudden, we were just standing around waiting, and I said, well, I guess he's not going to come. And I went over to get a beer out of the fridge, and there was a whole case of Stroh's beer. They thought it was Stroh's. It's an American beer, so this was...
He's my interpreter.
I'm the interpreter for him.
Well, in English, thank you very much, Darryl.
Okay.
Darryl is with you through the 80s as Genesis reached an even wider audience and appealed to a new generation. Now let me take you back to those days, to 1983, when you answered a request on behalf of one young fan to make a very special recording.
And that fan was my son.
To take up the story, Dr. Don Clark. Don, we're talking about almost 20 years ago.
Yes, we are, when my son was a very keen cyclist and he's on his way to school and some idiot motorist bounced him off the roof of the car onto the back and down on the floor, and he was a pretty hopeless coma. In fact, they said he was a write-off. And I didn't want that. I wanted to try out a revolutionary idea of trying to stimulate him with all the senses, including sound. And as in fact he was a tremendous Genesis fan, I got in touch with Radio Wyvern and they got in touch with you. That's right, yeah. And you made that recording. But what I'd also like you to know, which has never been said before, is at that time, of course, I was down in the dumps. And I thought, how on earth are we ever going to do it? And because you were prepared, I thought, here's this big superstar prepared to help something like this. Be damned if I'm going to be beaten. And David came out of it, and then we went on, and we were able to help hundreds of people through the UK and the rest of the world, thanks to you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this is what you recorded for David.
Hello, David. This is Mike Rutherford from Genesis. We prepared a whole tape for you of Genesis music. I hope you listen and like it and recognise it. And next time when you recover and you're back in action, just ring us up and I'll give you the number and come and see us at the next show. And let me know if you enjoyed the tape or not. Thanks very much.
After 3 weeks and a day, David emerged from his coma. It's been a long and difficult time for him in terms of recovery, but he is here tonight. David Clark.
Very good to see you. I'm so glad.
So, David, Mike and the boys were true to their word.
Yeah, I went to the NEC in Birmingham in 1984, and it was wonderful. I can't say any more than that. It was wonderful to go behind stage, meet them all, no problem.
And you came away with something by the look of it.
Oh yes, the Genesis Mama jacket. Not seen often in Hereford, because it's my pride and joy.
Thank you very much. Mike Rutherford, this is your life.
Next tonight, words of wisdom from Pat to Nat, EastEnders, and then later Steve and Maria face the morning after The Office kiss. Trust is at 9.